Good afternoon. Welcome to the Lunch and Learn episode 2 on discrimination. My name is David Girard. I'm the Senior Union Representative for Governmental Service Union. Today we will cover discrimination in general and cover a tiny bit more as a refresher on what is discrimination and how can we help our members with this topic. Just as a short introduction, your best source for information are the two following websites for our members working in the federal public service or the Royal Canadian Mint. So the first one is the Canadian Human Rights Commission, and the second one is the PSAC website. So the PSAC will touch all types of topics related to discrimination, so including news article or some training material or some case law. And the Human Rights Commission will more cover like what is, how to file a complaint, and what does the Act protect against. Just be mindful with our members working in all provinces, they might hear about or you might have a tendency to go consult a provincial website. Be mindful that what's listed there might not apply for your members. So you should stick with the collective agreement and the Canadian Human Rights Commission. So let's get started. What is discrimination, right? So we often hear it in the newspaper, in our collective agreement. And so if we look at the dictionary say that it's the practice of unfairly treating a person or a group of people differently from other people or group of people. That's it. So you're treating a certain group of people in a certain way. And it's not the same that you're treating the rest of the people. If we look at our collective agreements, it's about the same thing with a huge caveat. There is grounds listed there. Okay, so you see here that it's the same thing. So it's the practice of treating a group or a person differently, but it must be at least partly or in full due to one of the grounds that are outlined in those definitions. So what are those grounds? Well, it depends. It depends if you're talking about violation of the collective agreement or violation of the Act. So the Canadian Human Rights Commission described discrimination as an action or a decision that resulted in the unfair treatment of a person or a group of persons because of certain reasons. Those reasons that we call grounds are protected under the Canadian Human Rights Complaint. And this is the list. So race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, marital status, family status, disability, genetic characteristic, or a conviction for which a pardon has been granted or record suspended. Okay, the Treasury Board collective agreement also refers to membership or activity in the alliance as a ground for discrimination. Okay, so if you don't have one of those grounds that is at least part of the reason why a member is discriminated against, well, it's not discrimination as fair as the collective agreement or the Act. So discrimination comes in various types. I think it's important for the activists to be mindful about this, to understand that some discrimination are more insidious than other type of discrimination. Legally speaking, it doesn't change much. There is some type of discrimination where you have a bit more recourse, but officially, either it's direct discrimination or indirect discrimination, the legal test is still the same. But I think it's important to understand the difference. So when what do we mean by direct discrimination is literally the employer is saying a certain group of person can do something while the other can't. So for example, driving job is posted, only open to male applicants. Okay, so that's direct discrimination. There is very limited circumstances in which an employer might be able to make a case for a bona fide occupational requirement for the job. Direct discrimination is relatively rare in 2021 with our employers in Canada at the federal level, but still we see some. What we see a tiny bit more is indirect discrimination. And this one is insidious because you have a tendency of not seeing it at first glance. You really need to look at it with a closer eye in order to be able to see this. So an example, and I think it's a great one, is applicants for a job must wear protective helmet. It looks that it applies to everyone equally, right? But it does not, because some members of some religious groups are at this disadvantage because their religion believes they have to wear something on their head and they cannot wear a protective helmet. So what do we do in that case? Well, indirect discrimination is unlawful, whether it's done on purpose or not. It's only allowed if it's necessary for the way that business work, and if there is no other way to achieve this. I chose that example because this was determined by court in the past, and that condition about protective helmet was considered justified for workers traveling in terminals of the Port of Montreal for health and safety reasons. So some members of certain religious group pushed that through the court, saying that no, it's discriminatory against us. And the court determined that no, this is a bona fide occupational requirement, and the employer has the right to mandate the protective helmet to be wear in some specific part of their job. So this is just a start, however, because once you identify that bona fide occupational requirement, the employer must accommodate discriminated workers to the point of undue hardship. So then we would move into the accommodation aspect of the discrimination. The third type of discrimination is discriminatory harassment. So when we talk about harassment, we know, and you know a bit what harassment is about in the workplace. But it's important to understand that sometimes harassment is what we call personal harassment. Okay, so personal in the sense that there is no ground of discrimination that is behind the harassment that you're subject of. So both type of harassment are unacceptable in a workplace, but they give you access to different recourses. So that's why we are covering this here. So in terms of discriminatory harassment, it's the same thing as discrimination. It must be based on one of the ground, partly or in full. It doesn't need to be the only reason why you're discriminated against is because of the color of your skin. If it's just one of the reasons, it's still considered to be discriminatory harassment. So what recourses are available? Well, it depends. So it depends whether the discrimination, the reason for the discrimination is one of the grounds listed in the Act. So if it is, then you have access to informal resolution, grievance, and human rights complaint. What if it's not? And an example of this, the employer is treating differently in the NCR. So in the National Capital Region, the employer is treating differently people living in Quebec, in Gatineau, than people living in Ottawa. It's not one of the ground listed neither in the collective agreement or the Act. So it is discriminatory, but not discriminatory as fair as the Human Rights Act or the collective agreement. So therefore, what can you do about this? Well, you still have informal resolution, and those are the legal recourse that you have access to. There is also political recourse in terms of consultation with the employer and all of this. But here we're really looking at like legal procedures that you can initiate. So you have informal resolution. You have what we call for and this is exclusive to public servants, you have non-adjudicable grievance, okay? So usually they should not be filed unless there is a good reason that you have discussed with the griever. Why it should not be filed? Because we know that they cannot go to arbitration. Okay, so that type of grievance will end at final level. So why would you file such a grievance? Is, let's say you know that this is something that only that manager applies. So you know that by raising the grievance, you'll be able to speak to the director or the director general. So that could be a good enough reason to file that grievance. But if you are to do this, explain to the member why. Explain to the member the process, saying that this is an adjudicable grievance. The farthest it will go, it's there, but our intent is to bring it to the DG so that he's aware of it, and after that we'll drop the grievance so that the member, the expectation are clear. So the subsequent question is there harassment allegations? So if there is a harassment allegation and it's a discrimination case, then you have access to the same recourse that are above, but you also have access to violence in the workplace complaint, which you should exercise, okay? So what about the remedies? Be realistic with the remedies. Make sure that you are on board and that the member is on board and understand where and what can be obtained at the end, okay? Discuss the expectation and explain the process. And the process is either the Canadian Human Rights complaint process or the grievance. Like, you know, as an activist, you have a better sense of what the process looks like in terms of the steps, in terms of the timeline also. It's important at the lowest possible level to explain that to the best of your ability to the member, so that they know what to expect and they are not disappointed with the union or the process, okay? It's also important to explain the grievance will be reevaluated during the grievance process and may be withdrawn, depending on how the situation develop or if there is new precedent that we're not aware of before. So I listed there a list of possible corrective measures. Please use that with caution. You must tailor those remedies to the member's situation. So use the one that are appropriate. And also, if there is some that are missing for your circumstances, do not hesitate to add them. One of the area where we struggle the most is the compensation. So you see that there is a compensation listed there of $20,000 for a certain ground and $20,000 for another ground. So this totals to $40,000, and it's the maximum compensation allowed by the Canadian Human Rights Act. And this is super important because depending where you live in Canada, members might be under the impression that amounts are significantly higher, and it's the case in the province of Ontario, but not for our members. Our members are subject to the Canadian Human Rights Act and that cap at $40,000. Discrimination is unacceptable, no matter if it's little discrimination or big discrimination. But be mindful that the $40,000 is the cap. So it needs to be a significant discrimination. So other or small instances or discrimination that only lasted for a little period of time with little impact will be lower on that scale. And this is something that needs to be explained to the member because otherwise they'll have their expectation to the roof and it's going to be very difficult to go through that process with them. Okay, so that's quite important when we are talking about remedies, like formal remedies. So what if you have questions about that? So what can we do in terms of questions? So where can we go with our questions? So the GSU is using the knowledge tree. So depending on the hat that you're wearing in terms of union, you'll refer to a different person. And the sole purpose of this is to empower the activists and make sure that they are more and more trained and they have more and more knowledge about all of the subject. So the knowledge tree, if you're a member, you're referring to a shop steward. If you're a shop steward, you're referring to chief shop steward. So the first time that the chief shop steward have a question and he's not unsure about the answer, he'll go to the local president. But then the second time, he'll know the answer, so it will stop there. So if the shop steward was to go directly, let's say, to us at the national level, all of the other folks would be in the dark. So the chief shop steward would not know about this, the local president neither the RVP. So we are always here to provide assistance, and we are welcoming any questions you have. You don't need to be shy about raising a question with the person that you're referring to. So the either shop steward should never ever question whether they should go to the chief shop steward or not. If they are unsure, they go. Same thing with the local president to the RVPs or the RVPs to our office. We are here to help you and support you and assist you in your questions or issues that the members are facing in the workplace. So I'm turning the table to you. I have any questions? Kevin.
Yeah, hi David, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, awesome. My question is it possible that some characteristics of discrimination have more weight than others? Like, would we recommend filing grievances with various aspects of discrimination if those exist? So for instance, if somebody is discriminated on the grounds of religion, as well as like sexual orientation, would we file grievances separately or would they be lumped together?
So the best course of action we would propose is one grievance, because what we want is we'll be able to provide arguments. We'll be able to say, okay, there is those allegations, it's discriminatory for against religion for that reason, medical for that reason. If we are to file various grievances, then we're kind of siloed. We can't really have the big picture, right? So you're presenting the grievances together, but each grievance is kind of separate. We won't be able to get more compensation because there is more than one ground. So by filing multiple grievances, okay, we'll be able to get $40,000 here, there, and there. Unfortunately, it's not how it works. It's really about the situation, how the member was treated.
Perfect. Thanks, David.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, so thank you all for participating in that second Lunch and Learn. Looking forward to see you in January for episode number 3. The subject will be determined at a later stage. Follow us on all of our platforms. The presentation will be posted on our website as well as on our YouTube channel, Governmental Service Union. So we invite you to send in any questions you have. Thank you and have a great day.